deep dive is going to be on organizers. So these are how we can create forms inside of Keeper, and we'll get into all the nitty-gritty and fun features around that. So that's kind of our deep dive for today. But in case we are new faces or you haven't joined us before and you're like, who are these ladies talking about, organizers? We are Hughes and Strong Consulting, and we've got a couple of other team members here as well to help us keep track of all the questions. But we started this side of things after both coming from bookkeeping in a variety of different ways. So Jody has her own clients, went through Bookkeeper launch. I was doing consulting on how do we find our niche and how do we kind of work through the imposter syndrome. And we found each other through a mutual friend, and then it was kind of history from there. We both get super nerdy and really love all things systems, workflows. How do we make this flow smoothly? What do we do with all of these things to make our work easier? So that's where we got really nerdy, and where both of our brains get excited about things like that. So we started Hughes and Strong Consulting to make that a little bit easier for everybody else, so that you don't have to spend all your time in the changelog to find the hidden features that are really cool about Keeper. So one thing that is really important to us, though, is that every business is different. And that's cliche, and I wish I had a better way to say that, but I don't, because it's so true. So any ideas that we share are strictly for inspiration only. So this is not adding more shoulds to your plate, right? And you should be doing this, or here's how you should be using Keeper to get it, to maximize its efficiency. Like, yes, I'm all for that. We're all for sharing all of the cool ways that you can use this tool, but I want you to take these with a grain of salt for what's going to work for you, what's going to work for where you want to go next in your own business and with your goals right now, and what season are you in? Because for some of us, this is the craziest we're going to be, and we may not have time for extra things on top of what we're doing. So just keep that in mind, that these are all coulds, not shoulds. Don't add more to your plate, and be really careful about any internal pressure that you feel about some of these ideas that we're going to talk about or anything like that, okay?
Thanks for that intro, Erica. So as you mentioned, today we are doing a deep dive into organizers. We're going to share an overview of them and their functionality, and then we're going to give you some creative examples of how those can be used. And then, of course, we are going to open up the floor for any and all questions Keeper related. So how to utilize it, optimize it. If you're having a question about how to troubleshoot something, we can look into that. If you're curious about other features, feel free to ask. And please do feel free to drop questions into the chat at any point during our talk. But yeah, so let's get into it about organizers. So what are they? They're a way for us to be able to create a form of questions. So gather a series of questions together, submit that to the client as a form, makes it really easy for them to go through it and answer it. These could be used instead of or in addition to individual client portal questions as well. Now, they were designed as part of the tax suite, so it does require the tax suite for you to have access to this feature. And they were designed to capture tax information, but they were built to be versatile. So the possibilities are endless, which we love to see because we definitely geek out about all the different ways that you could use a feature within Keeper. So we're going to dive into all sorts of different ways that you could use them. But yes, they are part of the tax suite, and there are some default tax organizers built into that. But then there are lots of ways to use them outside of the tax suite. Where do you create them? So you will find them within your templates. So under your template manager, it always defaults to this tasks area. But if you tab over, you'll see organizers. If you have access to it, it will live there. And that's where you can add new ones and dive into creating the different slides. And the slides would be the different question types. And they do give you quite a variety of slide types or question types built in here. Everything from short answers to drop downs, multiple choices. They also have this multi-input question, which we give an example over here of what that might look like to gather additional details from your clients.
One that I want to point out there as well is that you can have a file load embedded within. So if you're asking, we'll kind of cover this as we go through
Mhm.
examples, but if there's any that you want to ask a question about and then gather, like upload this document here as far as like paper trail, that also can be embedded in the form.
So these organizers, once you've published them, they go to the client portal and your client will see them here on the client portal page. Now, it does require the version 2.0, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But where your client will see that is here in the actions required space. As a questionnaire, they click on that and it pops up on top of the screen for them to fill in the questionnaire. All right, Erica, let's dive into some examples.
Okay, so I am all things sales front end. How do we ask things very efficiently? So uh, I will try to not talk too fast, but I do get excited. So, kind of default example, and this is taken straight from the Keeper default that if you go into organizers, it's already there for you to give you an example of how these work, of kind of common questions, that sort of thing. So, tax was originally what it was created for. So this is their 1040 example where you can see it asking about spouse and wages and contractor income and lots of different areas that you can again set up as individual questions or what Keeper calls slides that have different that move people through the different questions that you're going to have to ask in order to be able to prepare their filing. So this is the most common example, but now we're going to get into the more creative out of the box examples.
Yep.
So this is one of my favorite personally is getting to adapt this organizer for onboarding. So I'm sure most of you are familiar right now. We can ask individual questions as part of a template when a client first onboards. Sometimes those stack up though, and you have a whole list that your client, first thing they log into the portal, they have a bajillion questions. That can sometimes trigger overwhelm. So I really like the idea of using this for onboarding. So having any questions that you're going to ask around, hey, what's our main point of contact going to be? Are you going to have a secondary point of contact? And what should we ask them questions about? Let's kind of fill in the gaps. Are you going to use any third-party platforms or tell us about the loans you have, fixed assets? Again, a lot of the kind of typical onboarding questions just to make sure you're covering all your bases and you know what services or what templates to apply from here. Now, we did talk about onboarding in general, but we can also split this out into individual areas because sometimes if a client is coming on for payroll or sales tax, we're going to have additional questions. So we could have a general form that has all of our onboarding across the board. And then if we know a client is coming on for specific services, we can create a form or an organizer for those specifics. So who's going to be the point of contact about payroll questions specifically? And what processor do you use? What's the frequency? That sort of thing to gather that information again in a concise way. Next up, I've also seen this used for year end. And again, this is where we start to take this concept as a let's look at this as a theory and where can we apply this in the business. You could even do some of your year-end questions in here to gather some of that data around final cash on hand, or please upload a gift card report if that's applicable, who's going to file your taxes, those sorts of pieces of information, just to make sure you're all prepped for year-end as well. So again, this is a concept that can be adapted to anywhere that you would usually use non-transaction questions or would have a separate form. Now we can just have those inside of Keeper. Oh, last one. I forgot about this one. I have started to see this used on the front end if you're using Keeper or unconnected clients to keep track of diagnostic reviews that you're doing. So maybe you're not connecting them. We don't want to have the whole charge and everything, but maybe we want to gather some of those initial pieces of info and everything that we're going to need for the diagnostic review. Maybe we create an organizer for that specifically, again, to make it a really smooth client process and reduce the overwhelm with individual questions. This also is a little bit of a hack for making sure that all the questions actually get answered. I think that's one of the most difficult parts when we see with onboarding questions, and that in general is like if we have a two-part question, some people will just skim and do the first part, but this is individual questions that I can sort in a way or add a multi input where you can't skip that question quite as easy. So I really love that. And I think the forms are a really good use of that.
Now, some important notes about organizers. They are available for connected and unconnected clients. We did mention that they only will show up on in the Client Portal 2.0 version, which again we'll touch on in just a moment. The client's progress is saved automatically as they go through, uh, and then completed forms, you can see them in two places. The portal, go to organizers, you'll see completed. We'll show you where that lives when we open up the demo here in a moment. But then if you did request uploads, then you can see those in those auto organized folders underneath organizers here. So that's where everything will be housed. And you can set limitations for team access. So you can decide who will have access to be able to see that. Now, one big limitation, which we did see a question come through the chat already about it, is are they dynamic? Can you have conditional logic built in? So the example for that would be, do you offer payroll? And if yes, then other questions populate. If no, they just keep going through. At this time, that is not included. That's not a feature, but there is a feature request out there, and we will share that with everyone so you can help to upvote it. But there is no conditional logic built in quite yet.
Yep. And let's kind of dig into that a little bit. So, Jody, where can we even find whether we're using Client Portal 2.0? I think
Yes.
that's a big question I get all the time is like, okay, it only works on 2.0, but how do am I on version one? Am I on version two? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to be able to find that within your practice settings. You're going to go to Client Portal and you're going to look for that branding tab. And under here, you'll see Customize Your Portal. And if you are still on 1.0, you will see an indicator here that says 1.0 and it gives you the option to upgrade. Now, once you upgrade, you cannot downgrade back to 1.0. So I can't show it to you today because our portal has been upgraded to 2.0. But this is what you'll see. So 1.0 version still looks a little bit like this. And then the 2.0 version you will see has some additional spaces for it, slightly different look here.
Yep, exactly. So that branding page, you'll be able to see a drop down if you are not already on 2.0.
It'd be
So
right
that'll
there.
be your indicator and it'll say you're on 1.0. But this is the biggest difference here between 1.0 and 2.0, other than some smaller kind of nitty-gritty pieces, is this action required bar. So instead
Mhm.
of somebody having to go to the transaction questions, the non-transaction questions, they're going to see this. Here's where you need to take action, and your organizer will be listed there if it needs to be completed.
Yeah, yeah. And when you are looking into this, if you have the option here, it'll allow you to toggle between them and preview it before you finalize it. So you'll have a whole preview screen down below.
Now, this is one of the most common questions we get right now is like about question and being dynamic, right? Or that conditional logic. So I did throw the feature request in the chat if anybody wants to go upvote right now. But if we have that limitation, what can we do about it right now? So we can, inside of the slide or each individual question, you can go ahead and select is it required or can a client mark non-applicable? So that is one thing that we could do is allow our clients to go through and say, this does not apply to me, this does not apply, but you have the full list of questions. So that's one option. The other that I've seen, and Kate Leader actually gave us this example for that she's using for hers, is you can have the form be, or the organizer be all of your general questions. And then if yes to HSA, then let's ask some more specific questions around that specifically. So what forms am I going to need? What do I need more context around? So there is the ability to kind of pair that organizer with additional either organizers or questions if you want to create a template with just those questions to kind of drop in for more info as needed.
Now, another popular question that we get is, what if I don't have the tax suite? So what can I do instead of using those organizers? And so there's quite a few different options. So you've got your non-transaction questions where Erica was just talking about it. You can put those in groups and ask questions here.
And this is pretty commonly used with like onboarding, right? That's the best example here that we're all used to asking non-transaction questions. And inside your templates for those task templates, you can choose, hey, do I want to add client portal questions or not have tasks at all and just have client portal questions in there? So pretty
Yep.
flexible on that and think about onboarding of what we usually do, but that can be adapted to tax or payroll or anything else that you're going to need more info on.
And if you would prefer to have a separate form, you can always include a secure link. So you can pop that in as a non-transaction question that then links to a form that's outside of Keeper.
Yeah, this is one that we want to explain because it is pretty commonly used and it's a great example. We do have to do our due diligence though, because we want to make sure this is actually secure. Because for a lot of these, they're going to have pretty sensitive information. So we can't just use a plain Google form. We'll need to look into Drop Form Advanced or tax form specifically or something like that. But if you would rather wait until organizers are a little bit more baked and they have some of that conditional logic and you do want that to be part of your form, then there's plenty of other software that can do that. But we can link it within our client portal here inside of Keeper to act as the main house for everything and send somebody to that form specifically to answer those questions, but still have everything kind of housed within Keeper and see when that question got answered or viewed.
Yeah. So
So
what
that was a
questions do
big
you
deep
guys have
dive.
around organizers? Yeah, what other questions are popping up for you?
Alrighty. With that being said, if there's no other questions on that side, then feel free to, we'll pop into the demo and give a little bit of live examples of where to find these, because sometimes the slides are helpful, but don't quite put it into context enough. So we'll pop into the demo, show some of those pieces for organizers. But please, fair game, pop any questions, whether we got a little bit fast and you couldn't type fast enough for your organizer questions, or if you have something about workflows or another area of Keeper, we'll take it kind of at your lead from here.
So to find them, we had mentioned that before, you're going to go to your templates area and you're going to see the organizers here. You can see we've got quite a few built in. I want to show you the slide options that we have created here so you can get a view for what that's going to look like. Now, right there's the plus. So if you're ready to create a new one, just select that and then you can start dropping things in. But you've got short answer, a number input, drop downs, multiple choice, address. You've got all of these here. And as you're building them out and choosing your settings and figuring out how you want this to look, you can toggle on this preview so that you can see what it will look like from your client. So when they are actually going through it, what is this slide going to look like? And you can thumb through all of those as you build them out to be able to see that. And same thing here. This one is already built out and you can see the various questions um, and options there. And then once you have it set and you're ready to go, you can apply to clients similar to your other templates. You apply to client, you select the client you want it to go to or clients you want it to go to, and then you can either apply and publish. Publish means it's going to push it straight to the client portal, or you can apply it as a draft. Now, when you're inside of your client, you're going to see that here in the client portal area, you've got an organizers tab up here, and you have two spaces, one for draft. This is something that you might still be working on, and then one for published. And this will show you which ones are in progress and which ones have been completed.
If you'll pop over to the draft, I think this is a really good example of, but what if I have specific questions for a client that I don't need to ask normally? So this is where we can still use a template, drop it in, but now I have the freedom to delete questions I know I won't need for that client or they've already been answered, or to go add additional slides or questions for anything specific to this client. So I think that's a really nice way to use a baseline of a template without while still having that customization for clients individually.
And here's where you can select that restriction as well for your team access to who can see this and who is has that visibility.
Absolutely. Alrighty, Jody, we did get a question coming in around organizers. So Karina asked, can invoices be paid through organizers? So really good question here. At this point in time, there is no pay like slide option to where they could enter in like their information. That secure payment isn't baked into organizers. What I have seen is using that e-signatures, which is a whole rabbit hole itself, but e-signatures can be used to create like an ACH authorization or to have somebody sign off on an invoice to allow you to process. So not quite in organizers. I haven't seen that be the best example used or the best way to go about that, but you could kind of hack signatures to use something similar to authorize that payment so that you can process it behind the scenes or fill in that ACH information. Great question.
Yeah.
And then Jody, if you don't mind, can you go into the preview for the
Yes.
client portal so we can see what that looks like and how it functions on the client side?
So in order to preview that, this is something that we always love to showcase because it can get hidden in here. But if you're on your portal settings where you have all of your client contacts, come over here to the preview column, click on that little eye, and you're going to see exactly what your client will see when they log in. So this is a great example of all of the ones that we had set up and testing that we were playing around with. But you'll see them all right here. Action required. You've got all of these questionnaires. When they're ready to work on it, they click on it, it will open it up on top of that screen. They can then go through, answer all of it, and hit submit once they get to the
And
end
that's
there.
what that non-applicable is going to look like as well. They'll have a little checkbox that they can go through
Yes.
and select not applicable. So that's kind of a live working version. Now, we did mention it does autosave. So Jody, do you mind going back into organizers and show the completed so that we can see what it looks like when they actually answer their questions? So this is everything filled in on that right-hand side that you can kind of go down and see how they answered the questions, that sort of thing. Now, one limitation that I have seen, but that has been highly requested, and I've even seen Ben mention in the Facebook group that this is something they're working on. Right now, there is no easy export. Right? There's not that export button that we see in a lot of areas to be able to download or print that completely. So, a couple workarounds that I've seen. We can always do something to where we do the screenshots of it. That's not the best way, but it is possible, and then save those in our files. The other thing that I've used quite a bit in this kind of example is there are plenty of extensions, so like a Chrome extension, where it will take a screenshot of the full page. So I think that's one of the limitations with screenshots is I can only screenshot what's on this page, and then I have to scroll down, do another screenshot. But there is an extension that I use quite often called Go Full Page for Chrome that you can click on the extension and it scrolls down through the whole page and creates that as a PDF. So a couple of options there just as far as workarounds until they do have kind of export natively built in, but wanted to go ahead and address that while we were in kind of the demo side of things.
All right,
Alrighty,
friends,
so
are there any other features that you're curious about that you want us to highlight or show you where it is?
or
Anything that you
troubleshoot with
are,
you.
yeah, yeah, everything is fair game.
In the meantime, while people are typing, Jody, let's kind of mention or let's go over to files to show where we can see anything that was uploaded in an organizer. That's a
Yep.
common question that I've seen in the group.
Get back there. Okay. So up here at the top, files, coming down to our auto organized files into our organizers. And you'll see that this is where the organizer that is completed is and the attachment that was loaded during that as they were completing that organizer. All
Yep. And
down
just
here.
with many other areas of Keeper, we can move this to our own file system up
Mhm.
the top. If we're like, these auto organized just drive me crazy, we can always move that. And this is an area where a little bit of a demo goof, but if we have multiples that were uploaded underneath and I want to move each individually, we don't have to click move for each and every one and go down 3 or 4 or 5 of those. We can, there is a tiny little checkbox on the far left-hand side that we can select and move in bulk. So if that's one thing that kind of breaks your brain or feels inefficient, then we can do that in bulk as well. And that goes with any files here. That's just a really good example to talk about it with organizers. Actually, Jody, I have one more workaround that I'll share while we're in here. So if you'll scroll up to the custom supporting documents, I've got like 3 or 4 examples in there. Yep. So here we can show going through and checking the boxes on that side. Now, this can be tedious if you have a bunch and you have to click each and every one, whether it's for an organizer or you're offboarding somebody and need to bulk download all of their files to be able to share with them. So, little hack that I found, select the top one, hold shift and click the bottom one, and that'll select everything in between here in organizers. So don't break your brain. Don't sit there for 15 minutes clicking all the boxes. That's an easy way to use that to bulk select in a way to make that a little bit easier as well. Jody, do you mind popping into the chat? We've got a question from Sandra
Yeah.
around saving everything to the auto organized folders.
Okay. You might need more context. Let's see. So your auto organized, that's going to come from anything that's, let me go back to them. So you got your custom sections. These are all driven by the tasks inside of your close page. The custom sections, if it's under weekly, that's where that is going to be saved. Um, if you are trying to move things, let's see, auto organize tasks, and you'd have to select the task that you want it to be assigned to. In order to move something to auto organized, it's all based on the tasks or the vendor or the organizer, the return, like those kinds of things. Auto organized means that it's you've attached it somewhere else in the system, but you can always go back here to find them. So I'm not sure if that's answering her question or not, or I might need more context on what issues she's running into here.
Yeah, Sandra, are you able to unmute? Do you have a working microphone?
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
No, you're
Um,
fine, you're fine. Go ahead and give
I
us a little
just
bit more context to make sure we got your question properly.
I think the issue is that I didn't understand the difference between auto organized and custom. So
Hmm.
when I access the files and I see, I don't know the specific folder, but just say it's bank statements, and I
Mhm.
see it in auto organized, and I'm uploading all my client statements and it doesn't let me add it to auto organized. I have to add it to custom. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's a perfect example of where the kind of fundamental concept helps, right? Because auto organizes, we've attached it to a task, or it's been uploaded by our client, or it
Or
was
it's in a
attached in an
question.
organizer. Those sorts of pieces are naturally going to go to auto organized. We just have additional flexibility to add them to custom folders if we don't like that folder structure, or if we want to kind of move it into a more grand scale where everything's going to live outside of just the things that are attached to tasks. So I don't think you're missing anything. I think
Okay.
it's just that those are kind of, as it says on the tin, auto organized because they're attached to a task. So we can't upload something to auto organized because Keeper says, no, I decide what's in auto organized. It's because it's in a task or something like that. So I don't think you're missing anything. That's a really good use of those custom folders, is just to attach things that we're going to have, like
Hmm.
bank statements is a really good example because we're going to gather them. Our client didn't upload them. They weren't in an organizer or something like that. So that's where we'll only have access to that custom file structure. Does that help at all? I
With
want to make sure we didn't like circle the pot too much that it
No,
Well,
didn't.
and I was
that's
going to
very
say
helpful.
with bank statements, if you're wanting to attach it to the account under account reconciliation, then you could have it in auto organized. But again, it has to be attached to something in the close page there on a task or that kind of thing to be able to get it here in this section.
So I didn't realize I'm not using Keeper to the best of its ability, right? I'm a one person team here.
Yeah.
So lots of
Use it where you
times,
need it. Let go of the stuff that you're like, I don't have time to figure that out yet.
yeah. So lots of times what will happen is, I've missed uploading statements for 3 months and then I go back up and I do it at the custom level. But you're saying that within the task where the reconciliation is, I can add that file there
Yeah,
Yes.
Jody,
and
let's
then
give
it
a
can
live
just be part
example
of the
of that.
process.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you, I
So
think
right
it comes down
here.
to personal preference. If you like it all in auto organized and you're like, I don't want to have to create a custom file structure, I just want to keep this as simple as I can, then here's how we would do that. So yeah, go ahead and share that live example, Jody.
So if you're doing it for the close that you're currently in, you got the close page here, you just click on the attachments to be able to upload it, and that would sync it here to this close, this account. But if you are like, oh, I've forgotten to do these, I need to upload multiples at one time, or say your client does a dump into the client uploads and they upload multiple statements. From here, you can move the file to auto organized, and then you would do closing tasks because account reconciliation is under your close. Now, if I'm looking for something very specific, I like to use all the filters. So if I know that the account name, I can start typing in the account name and filter that way. I can also filter by the section. I could filter by which close period am I looking for. And then once you find which one you want to attach that to, you just click this move button here and it'll attach it there. Now, once it's attached to that, you will see it in the file structure. So if you then come
Okay.
here to files and you look through, you're going to see, okay, I've got August assigned to my August close period. Does that kind of help?
No, that's very helpful.
Okay,
Yes. Thank you so
great.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Some of those auto organized folders broke my brain for a very long time of like, how, Keeper, how do you decide what's an auto organized? This is so confusing. So do not feel alone in that, but I'm glad we could break that down that those are attached to a task or something like that. So we
Which it will
can
show.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll show the exact piece, which is so helpful. So I know where it lives, and then we can move anything into our own file structure if we want, if that's something that
Right.
clicks with our brain better.
Right.
Great question, Sandra. Thanks for adding some context there so we can make sure we answer it
Yes, thank
completely.
you.
All righty. So, Jessica, really good question here. So, I have 2.0 turned on, right? The client portal, but the organizers are not appearing in my portal. Interesting. Jessica, my first question would be, have you published them? That's one thing that I got stuck on was I
Hmm.
added it, but I kept it as a draft. So, then it didn't show. So that's one thing that if they're sitting in that draft section, then we'll need to publish on the right-hand side. So that may be one piece that you just double check on the back end to make sure. I think past that, Jody, do you have any other questions or like things to kind of troubleshoot from there? That may be a
No, that
support
would be,
question.
yeah, and it looks like she might be waiting on support to help her with that already. But that is a good point to make sure you check if it's published or not. I also got tripped up on that initially. So making sure that you do have it as published, and then you can check here to make sure that it's listed here, and then do your previews to see if it's there. But if not, I think you're right on track. Reach out to support, use that function there and let them know because it could be a bug on the back end that they need to help fix.
Yep. And I think that's a good thing to mention here and just kind of sink our teeth into because sometimes it feels like we're bugging support and we're like, dude, I just don't know if I'm missing something or not. Anytime we've asked the team, because we ask all the questions. If I can't find something, if I'm asking for somebody else a question that I've heard. So they've reiterated to us multiple times, hey, likely you're not the only person with that issue, and we can only solve issues that we know about. So, may not have an immediate fix, but at least let them know and ask the question because they'll either A, know things to troubleshoot, or B, be able to add that to their bug log and let the developers work on it so that it fixes for you, but also anybody else that's having that problem but just hasn't had the time to ask. So, definitely worth reaching out anytime. And the support team, we ask a lot of questions. So, the support team has not told us you're asking too many questions yet. So I would venture
Yeah.
to say and not speak for them, but they're pretty accommodating for any or all questions, truly and honestly.
And I do want to say that there are two different parts to this. So the 2.0 version of your client portal will allow your client to see these organizers and the tax returns and that kind of thing when you publish them to the client portal. If you are on your side of it here and you're not seeing signatures and you're not seeing organizers, if these tabs don't exist in your system, that means that you do not have the tax suite. And these are both features that come with the tax suite, which is separate from your client portal and the 2.0 version. Two different pieces here. So if you're missing these, that's a tax suite feature. And if you're wanting to upgrade to include the tax suite, again, reach out to support. They'll help you with that process if you need it.
Yep. So Jessica or anybody else in that situation, double check to make sure that you've published them. Use that client portal settings and preview to see if it's showing up. That may be how you found that it's not showing up. But then double check and make sure that signatures and organizers are working on that page and there's not a disconnect because the tax suite is messed up in some way. So a couple of things to
Yeah.
troubleshoot, but great question there.
Yeah. And I did see Debbie's question come through about how long does it take to upgrade to 2.0 version of Client Portal? It's pretty quick. So if you're still seeing it spin, I'd recommend doing a good old fashioned log out, log back in and see if it processed. It could be that just the page is stuck.
Yeah, that's that's the typical IT answer of, did you turn it off and back on again? But it is really
Unplug
true.
it, plug it back in.
Yeah, so I would try refreshing the page or logging out and logging back
Yeah.
in. Typically, those are our first two to troubleshoot if something feels like it's stuck in that way.
And that
Other
is
than
kind of
that, definitely
another
reach
like
out to
little,
support.
that's another little bonus tip that I've noticed. I stay logged in to Keeper all the time. And then there'll come a day where things are a little wonky, and it's just I've been logged in too long. And so logging out and logging back in sometimes helps to kind of just reset the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that quite a bit if now that we can open new tabs for the individual like client pages, now I have all the tabs open and one of them will get stuck in some way or just load a long time. So that's a good time to refresh. Actually, Jody,
Yeah.
I had somebody the other day on a call that didn't know how to open to a new page. Do you mind going to the client list and we can kind
Oh,
of demo
sure.
that?
Yeah. Let me show my full screen here too. So if you right click, you can open it in a new tab. And that's gonna, so I right clicked on growth custom landscaping. This is gonna open that close page. So if you wanted to, you could just go down your list and open up a new tab for as many clients as you wanted to.
And I've seen this used pretty commonly if you have, let's say it's Wednesday, I work on these 3 clients. Maybe I open up these 3 client pages and work down the page until I get done with those tasks, close that page, move on to the next one.
You can
So,
also
really
hold
good example
control.
there.
If
Ooh,
you can
beautiful.
so instead of right clicking and instead of doing this and clicking the in new tab, if you hold down control, let me go. If you hold down control and just click, it'll automatically open that new tab.
That just broke my brain. That's great. I love a lot of those tiny things. I may or may not be able to remember them, but they are really cool
Yes.
for anybody who does.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Um, let's see. Any other questions that are coming up? I know we've talked about kind of a broad amount, mostly on the tax side. So if there's any questions coming up around anything else or an issue that you're struggling with, or I'm pretty new to Keeper, I have no idea where to start or how to start ramping it up, feel free to drop those down in the chat, and we'll get to anything before we wrap up. Jody, in the meantime, do you mind popping back to our slides and we'll give a quick overview for anybody who wants a
Yeah.
little bit more support while we're waiting on any other questions?
Yep.
Beautiful. So, you are on one of our free resources here. So, I'm all for freebies and what can I do to level up Keeper without having to drain my entire bank account if I'm in that DIY headspace and I really just want to play and learn more. So, these monthly Q&As, we do a different deep dive topic every month and then open them for Q&A like you saw today. We have a whole page of additional resources. So, quick little PDF about how to set up your client portal or how to use custom tasks and tags. So lots there to play around with. And then any of our previous deep dives and Q&As. So if you want to go back to the tax suite that we did last month or go back to saved views and how do I play with to create a custom dashboard on my client list, any of those can be found on our YouTube channel and kind of binge watched at your pleasure. Then that does move us into how can we help more? So if you are in a spot where you've just moved to Keeper and you need some team training, because I'm still learning it. I don't know how to explain this to my team and help them get really settled in it. We can always come in and be cheerleaders and help people navigate how to actually move through the system. There's some of us that have DIY'd our setup and we're like, okay, I know there's more to it, but I don't know what's going to be the most helpful for me, or I just don't even know if I'm setting this up right. So we can always do a diagnostic review where our team will take a look behind the scenes and make any recommendations or suggestions. And then from there, we go up in support. So we've got things from, hey, I just have been using Keeper forever and I need somebody to help clean up all of these bajillion closes that I have that I don't care about anymore. I want some templates, I want some support, all the way to, can you guys just set it up for me? I'll give you all the information that I have in my head, but I don't want to do the clicking. So pretty full scale just to meet you wherever you land, whether that is, hey, give me all the freebies, all the way to, hey, please do basically the whole setup and train my team. So anywhere along the spectrum, if you would like more info about pricing or services, or I don't know where I land, but I know I need help, feel free to email us at info@hughesandstrong.com and we will happily answer and kind of get you sorted with where to fall next. So, quick little tidbit in case anybody does need some help. And then that being said, Jody, we have plenty more questions now. So let's pop back into
All right.
those.
Back on over to the demo.
Beautiful. All right, Justine, I actually accidentally answered the first part of that question about what are our offerings. So feel free to see my last minute and let us know if you have other questions there. And then it seems like you have another question here. So my only inhibition to bringing on Keeper is the moving parts and the clicks. So I wonder if there's so much in the that the system does, it's hard to efficiently utilize it all, especially if you're solo. That's so true. And getting it into a new system and out of your brain is really, really tricky. So Jody, why don't you take a first crack at that, and then I'll kind of bounce back and forth with you.
Yeah. So what to me, what really sets Keeper apart is the built-in features. So it was designed to really help with month-end close, and over the years, it has evolved into a full project management system. We just showed you all these things that you can do with the tax suite, with organizers. There's e-signatures, there's emails. They have been building and building and building. So it becomes there's so much that you can do with it, but again, that gets really overwhelming. So I like to recommend go back to the basics. Go back to what Keeper's built off of, and that's going to be helping with your month-end close. That'll be, let me get to my demo account here. Uh, so utilizing the built-in features with the integration with your accounting software. That's where I was trying to get to. So I'm going to close these custom tasks, close the details. Your account reconciliation, these here, the transaction review, these reports pulled directly from the accounting software and gives you a place to be able to double check things, to easily make changes, make updates, because it pulls from that software, but you can make changes and updates in Keeper that pushes back to the software. And sometimes that can be a lot faster to do inside of Keeper than it is inside of the accounting software. So I highly recommend starting here and getting familiar with the various reports that are built in, and let that help you with your month-end close or your quarterly close. And that's a great place to start. The other key piece to Keeper is the client portal and being able to communicate with your clients back and forth to ask those questions. So a really great example, very, very popular one, is the uncategorized transactions. The ability to be able to ask your client, hey, what was this for? I can add that to my client portal. And then I've got that question banked here for them to be able to come through and help me categorize that, help me identify who's the payee. Um, and to be able to help keep those books up to date and accurate. Those would be the two places that I would highly recommend starting, because that's why Keeper was created to begin with, was to assist with this. And then everything else on top of that just becomes sprinkles and icing on the cake, right? So there is a lot to do. It is very overwhelming, but utilizing those two key pieces is what's going to be a game changer, I think, in my personal opinion there.
Absolutely. And I'm on the same boat here. I think the biggest theme to remember with any software that can do a lot of things is use what you need and what you want to help make your processes smoother, like those reports to catch our inconsistencies, or look at our P&L easier than we can in QBO and make changes from here that push over, those sorts of things. But that also means let's remove and delete the stuff that we don't need. Basically, everything in Keeper can be added back. Those reports, those like tasks, any other areas can be added back. So I always like to recommend, and I'm right here with Jody, of like use the core pieces that were kind of fundamental to why Keeper was created, because they're the most efficient. They're the least amount of clicks, they're the least amount of clunky, because they've been baked in from the beginning. And let's just remove and let go of the should and the shame of I'm not using it fully for the stuff that we don't need just yet. And we can add on as we get more comfortable with those or as we see benefit. So maybe starting to dabble in those 1099s or starting to dabble in different areas, let that flow pretty organically for you. But I would definitely recommend especially if you're solo and you're trying to avoid more clicks but make yourself more efficient. Remove the stuff that you're not going to need and let it be bare bones for a season and add on more as you need to or as you don't have a home for some of your tasks or some of your SOPs or anything like that. So hopefully that helps at least give you a point of where to start. But great question there.
Yeah.
All right, we got a quick question from Lori and then two that are very, very similar. So, Lori, I did answer here in the chat, but for everybody else, why did you put the yellow stars for a couple of clients on the client list? So, we've gotten a little, you can tell this is our demo in our sandbox and where we play around. But the 3 with stars are examples of where we can use Keeper for more project based and not specifically a client. So we've created some examples around how I can house my admin tasks if I have a VA, or networking BNI if I don't want a whole new system of Monday or Asana or ClickUp to house those tasks. But denoting them in some way, whether that's an asterisk or a little emoji or a star or something like that, can make it easier to skim that list and to know exactly where you're going or what is not a true client, but we're using Keeper a little bit more flexibly. So hopefully that helps on that side, Lori. Just a little bit of organization to keep those separate from our clients. Beautiful. And then Jody, the next two are actually really, really similar. So I think we can
Okay.
kind of combine them together and answer the question of, is there any reason why we wouldn't want to move to 2.0 of the client portal? We've got some questions around like, generally, there's always this nerve around starting a new feature that may or may not be fully like baked, or we don't know how clunky it is, or we don't really know the full ramifications of upgrading yet. So from your perspective, any reason that somebody may not want to go to the client portal 2.0?
I'm going to pull up this page as well. The Keeper help page for your clients, because this page gives you the a really good look at version 1 versus version 2. So a lot of it is going to be aesthetics, right? And functionality. So part of that is, let me see if I can get to it. The way that the questions appear, that's what's changed. How your clients are accessing it. Some people say that the 2.0 is a little bit more user friendly. Here's a good example when you're looking at the actual transaction questions of what the 1.0 currently looks like and what 2.0 looks like. So the 2.0 is a little bit more conversational style, more of like a text message back and forth
Like a
type
thread
thing.
style that you
Yeah,
see
like
in
a thread.
Slack or something like that.
Right, right. Um, any reason to wait? I'm sure that there are some that people have, there might be a few things that people haven't liked about it. I have not heard them lately to remember what resistance is there. I switched over pretty quickly because I liked this style. I liked the visual changes that they made to it. Um, I think on down the line, I don't know that it's going to be an option. I think eventually it will all shift over to 2.0 at some point. But I think it'll be your personal preference here.
Yeah, and I know I'm pretty active in the Facebook group, just scanning and kind of figuring out new ideas that we want to feature on a Q&A and that sort of thing. And initially, there was a lot of pushback and it was very clunky. That thread style did not work very well. And it was very hard to go back and forth. From what I've heard now, I do not hear as many of those complaints. And organizers actually show up and both work in the mobile version. So I think at this point, it is truly an aesthetic choice of which clicks more with your brain. And does that action required bar help your clients see what they actually need to do? So I think those are the big things that I would consider. But I would echo that. I've heard in the Facebook group there is going to be a shift to only 2.0 at some point. So I don't have any big red flags of I would wait until this is baked in or anything like that
Mm-mm.
personally, other than an aesthetic choice. But do be prepared that at some point that 1.0 will get shifted over to 2.0. So
Yeah.
your choice on whether you want to do that now and make that shift or later. But I think that's kind of the back and forth and a big confirmation that I haven't seen any of those big red flags that a lot of people hated about the first version.
Yeah. I keep all I can think of are reasons to switch over. I can't think of any reasons not to. But you have some more visibility. There's and I've been using it for a while too, so I forget what 1.0 feels like. But being able to delete, being able to edit questions, add more detail and context to them. Again, it's more thread-like. If you have a team of people, then the admin can edit. So if somebody else on the team asked a question, you can go in there and edit that question. And so to me, there's a lot of flexibility built in here now. And like Erica said, it's kind of been polished since it was first released. So
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
have
Great
any reasons to
questions.
wait.
Yeah, great questions, everybody. Um, wow, Jody, we snapped up right on time. That's crazy. That's a new one for us.
Oh,
So that being said, if you need to hop off to another call, feel free. Thank you so much for joining us on a random Wednesday and letting us geek out with you about all things Keeper. If there are any more questions that you either we weren't fast enough to get your little question answered, or if you have something that you're like, I didn't want to ask in front of the whole big group, but as people start filing off, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable. We'll stay on here for a couple more minutes to answer anything that's come through. So feel free to stay on. But at this point, feel free to hop off if you would like. For anybody that's on that was like, oh, I need to see that recording and go back to something you mentioned, or where did you find that? The slides and the recording will be sent out on Friday and then uploaded to the YouTube, to our YouTube channel on Friday as well. So if anything you want to kind of pop back on or review, that'll be there for you. But let's see if there's any more questions popping through. Thank you all so much for everybody that's saying that. I
thank you,
appreciate it.
everyone. We love doing these.
They're my favorite part of the month, which definitely shows that I am a nerd, but it's great. Ooh, Jody, are you familiar with Motion? Justine said she uses Motion for project and task management right now. I'm not familiar with that one.
That is not one that I've dabbled in quite a few, but that is not one that I have played in before.
Yeah. So, Justine, that's one that on a more
Or is it
individual level,
Notion? Is it Motion or Notion?
I have heard both.
Okay.
So clarify and just make sure that that's not a typo because Notion we are both super familiar
Yes,
with. But if it is Motion, my answer will probably be no, but we can help look on an
Motion.
individual level. So reach out to us at that info at Hughes and Strong if you want us to take a look behind the scenes and help you figure
Yeah,
out,
would
hey,
love to.
is it the same? What's going to be carried over? What's not? That's one of my favorite uses of a diagnostic review is to look at a system you already have and see, oh, yep, I think all of this will flow over into Keeper. Here's hesitations
Hmm.
that I would have. We don't work for Keeper, we're just Keeper lovers. So we'll tell you straight up if there's something that is not going to be a really good translation.
Oh, that's a cool feature, she said.
Ooh,
Auto
auto
reschedules work.
rescheduling work. Ooh. That is not available in Keeper. There are some workarounds as far as like creating an overdue list and adjusting the schedule and kind of reprioritizing, but that's not one that's baked into Keeper right now. It's a great feature request though.
Mhm. Ellen just asked, speaking of Notion, are there any integrations or ways to incorporate databases um, for that? So I have not looked into Zapier to see if there's integrations there between the two, but linking for sure. Erica's excited. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll let you say anything. I don't want to hog the mic from you. But Ellen, so I went down a Zapier rabbit hole. Zapier, however you want to say that. I mess it up every time. So, Inherently, if you have a database that has your like SOPs or more elaborate instructions on this task, you can link those within a task itself. Just include the link and it makes it clickable. So it's easy navigation between the two systems. That's how we've seen it most commonly. But there is quite a bit of Zapier integrations depending on what you want to do. So if you want something to update in Notion when a client status is updated, or kind of some of those sorts of pieces, there's absolutely quite a bit of integration. So I think it's worth going down the Zapier rabbit hole and seeing what is possible natively. Let me actually pull that page up for you. So I do think it's worth going down the rabbit hole, seeing what's possible. If you were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that, then reach out to us and I'll help you filter down what's possible and what might be a good use, especially if you're one of those that can see the vision, but you're not sure how to accomplish that. Let me know. That's one of our favorite areas to hop into. So there's the page where you can see what's available between Keeper and Notion and some examples. But definitely reach out to us if you have a vision and you're not sure if it's possible. Alrighty, Jody. I think that's all our questions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for hopping on and staying on for a little bit and asking lots of fun questions today. So, like I said, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Recording will be available on Friday, and then reach out to us if there's anything we either didn't get to or that you want to dive into more fully. So, thank you again so much for joining us on Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.